let's go on to the second thing, which is screaming. This is something I've never been able to do, and I've been so jealous of everyone who could scream, because especially James Brown and Prince are two of my all-time favorite singers, performers, and they scream. I mean, James Brown, his entire, like, you could just sum up James Brown entire vocal style and like without even saying a word. Wow, you know that. That was that. Wow.
Yeah, that type of sound. Yeah,
like that's it. Like, wow, I feel good. Da-da-da. And he would always, do that kind of thing. And I could never do that. And finally I taught in one of my videos, I did the Prince song, and I finally got that. Honey, I know times are changing. And he did that kind of sound. I almost now think that in order to learn how to sing higher, you almost have to learn how to scream. And the reason that screaming, the way to do it, what I've discovered, I used to try and kind of push. I used to like kind of push to, and it always kind of hurt, or like, make my voice sore. Now I can scream all day long. I can sing entire songs, like just AC/DC stuff, screaming, and it doesn't hurt at all. And I realized it's because you have to learn how to relax to scream.
Yep.
Like screaming is all about relaxing. I don't know. It's so counterintuitive, but it is. And so what I've realized is that most of the best singers, look at the Steven Tylers, at the, Van Halen, Sammy Hagar, all these guys scream and sung for years, maybe because they learned how to relax and engage at the same time. And play. Yeah. And so that's very difficult to do, but screaming helps so much, because it's the one time you have to relax in order to like make the sound and even have it like, instantly, okay, am I relaxing or am I not? Because if I'm not relaxing while I do it, it hurts, nothing else. You kind of know that. But I lost my voice on stage. I tried to scream the first time on stage because I was doing it in practice, no problem. I was trying to kind of scream on an A. And I went to do it in a show, and because I was so excited, I didn't relax as I did it, and just totally lost my voice. Like I couldn't barely, I couldn't sing the next day, because of one scream. It was so obvious. But then now I did it again recently, and I just had to tell myself, okay, David, like the note's coming up, you have to just relax, like do it so like lightly. And I told and I relaxed and did it, and it was no problem. So I think that it's almost like essential to learn how to scream, even if you don't want to be able to do it in your songs. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Again, I'll talk about the anatomy of it, right? So, in the absence of anatomical images, I'm going to keep using my hands. So if our vocal cords are down here, right, these are our vocal cords, and then our throat is sort of on either side up around it. A lot of times when people scream, the scream that you're talking about that is a like sort of a gritty, like the sound that we want in a lot of pop and rock music. A lot of times people, when they attempt to make that sound for the first time, they squeeze their vocal cords, which makes sense, right? Because, the vocal cords really are a sphincter in your body. They're a valve, right? They open and they close. And that's actually important that they open and close for breathing purposes. And they close if you're accidentally going to get something going down the wrong pipe. So our vocal cords are opening and closing all day long. And so it makes sense, just because we're used to that action. It makes sense that when we go to try to replicate that sound, our impulse might be to go, right? And squeeze on the vocal cords themselves. And the hand action that I would maybe do for that is like squeeze, 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 right? The issue is the vocal folds themselves, and I'm going to use those terms interchangeably, vocal folds, vocal cords, they're the same thing, right? The vocal cords themselves, they need to be free, exactly like you're saying. They need to be loose to actually do the singing, and the fancy word is phonation, the vibration, right? Making sound. And so actually the most effective thing to contract to create that sort of the grittiness that we hear in a scream is actually tissue touching tissue. It's related to the fact that, it's related to the same thing that happens down at the bottom of your pitch range, which is vocal fry.
Yeah, it's totally vocal fry.
Yeah, it's vocal fry, but it's vocal fry at a much different pitch, right?
Yeah.
And it's vocal fry, it's flapping around of the tissues, right? Above the vocal cords in what the area that's of your throat that's called the false vocal cords. So like if there are vocal cords here, then there are these two, like in your throat, there's these sort of like flaps kind of tissue above it that we call the false vocal cords.
Okay.
And they just have a little bit of bulk there, and they sort of hang down slightly, ever so slightly, over the vocal cords themselves. And there's enough tissue there that when it starts to bounce around and flap around, it creates that gritty screaming sound, right? That like Does this make sense?
So I'm going to ask a question then. So falsetto is using part of those same like fake vocal flaps or whatever you called them. Is falsetto also engage any of that?
It does not, that's not distinctive of falsetto. Falsetto is the vocal cords themselves meeting at a different edge. And this is why studying all this stuff is like, whoa, okay, that's that. And this is that, right? And everything. Okay. So falsetto itself, this thing that makes falsetto be falsetto is the vocal cords themselves meeting at an edge. It has less to do with the false vocal cords.
Okay, gotcha.
False vocal cords are sort of some tissue up in the throat that can flap around and create that sort of screamy sound. But if you squeeze all of it too tight, you're back in like the vocal cords themselves, squeezing everything, like just sort of co-articulating together, squeezing really tight. And then that's the time that you're going to get into the trouble when you even do just one scream and you go, oh God, now I'm done. I'm done for the night. Right?
Yeah, exactly. I sort of found that, that almost combining vocal fry and falsetto in my mind is what made the scream. So I would go that's sort of vocal fry, right? And that's sort of just like it sort of combines that. Like I think falsetto for the coordination, but then I think vocal fry for sort of the placement, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, and you're sort of tricking your tissues into engaging where they need to engage and releasing where they need to release. And you want, obviously the vocal cords are engaging to some degree, but we don't want them to squeeze and over engage because that's going to be tension and that's going to be pain, right?
Yeah.
We do want the false vocal cords to approximate and come towards each other slightly so that we get that sort of perturbation sound, but we also don't want our throat to squeeze so tightly because that's going to hurt as well, right? So it's almost like the hand motion that I would give for a healthy scream is this as opposed to this, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely not a squeeze. I always thought that I have to squeeze something. There's like, there's a distorted sound. How do you make a distorted sound without squeezing something? That was always kind of I think in my mind a bit. But then I realized these guys, and it really came together with all that head voice, especially Steven Tyler. If you listen to Back in the Saddle, I don't know if you know that song by Aerosmith.
You have to sing it for me and I'll know it. Yeah.
I'm back in the saddle again. And it screams like that. I'm back. Yeah. I mean, he was like, that's his thing, and it's so like harsh, but yet it's like head resonance and it's super easy. The feeling of that is like, it's easier than singing, in a lot of sense. And I think it sounds harder than singing. So it's like tricking your audience into thinking, wow, he's so badass. He's singing, I'm back in the saddle again. And then you can almost sing everything with that. He does that.
He does it all the time.
And it's like his whole sound is that, that dream on kind of, one time I look in the mirror, it's like almost the entire thing is just vocal fry, that vocal fry.
It's related for sure. It's related for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Cool.